r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. What was the wildest thing you witnessed at a funeral? A mariachi band crashed my father's funeral. Not intentionally, but it was during COVID, and everything had to be held outside, and was supposed to be limited to like 10-12 people max. And there was a Mexican family having a funeral next to ours, but they didn't heed the rules, and brought a full mariachi band, plus way more attendees than they were supposed to allow. We could barely hear ourselves speak. But my father would have found that hilarious, so we laughed about it later. I went to a funeral for my ex's pastor. Didn't know the guy. His wife was in the audience mourning. They had the part where people would come up and say nice things. To make a long story short, his side piece came up and basically let everyone know they were having a relationship behind his wife's back and said, "I'll always know I was the one he truly loved," and went on for a good 15 minutes and had to be escorted off stage. The wife was in utter disbelief. The whole place got silent and you could cut the tension with a knife. Talk about super awkward. A 4th grade boy from my school was killed in a car accident. He was a really well-known and loved kid from a big family, a really great kid. His older brother was a good friend of mine. It was just brutal. They held the funeral at the school gym, and it was standing room only. This was the 90s, and he had loved the Macarena. At the end of the funeral, they asked everyone to stand up and dance with him one last time. It was absolutely surreal seeing everyone in the gym sobbing and wailing while trying to do this happy dance. People were collapsing, hanging on to each other. What a freaking dichotomy. I remember walking out and wondering if I really did just witness that. Not wild but amazing. My grandmother passed at the age of 94 and planned her own funeral. She was the mother of 10 children, and years before, there had been a massive falling out between 2 of the brothers, and everyone basically picked sides, and then barely spoke for 20 years. My grandmother and her children are all good Catholics, and put a lot of stake into the word of God. So at her funeral, she made the 2 brothers at the epicenter, who were in their 50s or 60s, sit on the stage together, waiting their turn to read passages she had chosen for them. Both had to stand in front of everyone and speak about family and forgiveness, and it was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Granny really had the last laugh there. It was awesome. Damn. What started the fight, do you know? Their father passed away in the early 90s of Alzheimer's. The fight was all over their inheritance. It was real dumb. Good news is the cousins all saw how dumb it was, and we always worked to stay close. And no one wanted to have beef with Granny, as she was the best matriarch on earth. Love you, Granny. Miss you every day. Last week, the deceased's parents hated the deceased's wife and children, so they completely excluded them from every speech. They ignored the wishes of dressing the man with his wedding day suit and buried him on a Real Madrid soccer uniform. It gets worse. Every single person at the funeral, except for the wife, his kids, and the wife's family, were also wearing Real Madrid t-shirts. They did not let the wife speak at the funeral. It was the most horrible thing I have ever seen a mother-in-law do to a daughter-in-law. I was at a wake for a guy, and his friends had a jacked-up pickup truck in the parking lot, with a full keg going in the back. I never saw so many people that drunk at a wake. The deceased would have loved it. The elderly deceased had his elderly buddies as pallbearers. They were not physically able to carry the load, and the casket was dropped, broken, and the deceased made one final appearance. Chaos and screaming ensued. At one funeral, 2 brothers got into a full argument over the inheritance in the parking lot before the burial even started. Whole family was standing there in silence while they were yelling about a truck and a fishing boat. One of the mourners collapsed and died while waiting in line to pay respects. I was too young to remember, but apparently my grandfather's girlfriend showed up to the funeral. My grandfather was an office man from the 50s and 60s. Having a side girl was just kinda normal back then. Instead of telling her to leave, my grandmother straight up asks her, "Which girlfriend are you?" Which causes the other woman to take the hint and leave. A evangelical minister, who didn't know my grandfather at all, spent most of the sermon comparing my grandfather to Jesus, before launching into a tirade about hellfire. Mother holding her deceased infant child next to the empty casket. Seeing a child-sized casket is bad enough, but it was a lot. The smallest caskets weigh the most. I went to my friend's father's wake. I knew the deceased decently well, and the wake was being held at his own home. We knocked on the door, and the dead guy opened the door. We all stood there, mouth agape, trying to figure out why the guy who had just died was answering the door. He then introduced himself as the twin brother of the deceased, and said he knew not everyone knew that there was a twin, and he was enjoying messing with people coming to the wake. It seemed like a fitting prank to play, and the deceased would have very much enjoyed it. At my great uncle's funeral, two of his kids from different marriages, who didn't know about each other, showed up at the same time. The look on everyone's faces when they both walked up to the casket and introduced themselves as his children was something I'll never forget. The rest of the service was incredibly tense. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more. Have a nice evening. Tell your friends about me.